Have you ever really thought about the money in your wallet or in your bank account? Where did it actually come from? And I don't mean the printing press, I mean the idea of it. Well, the sources we're digging into today make a pretty bold claim. They argue that our entire global financial system wasn't born in some public government building. Nope. It was born in a secret meeting with a very specific agenda, one that would go on to shape a century of wealth and power. So let's pull back that curtain. Okay, so picture this. It's a cold November night back in 1910. There's this private, super luxurious railway car just sitting at a quiet, secluded platform. All the window shades are pulled down tight. You can't see who's inside. These guys were told to show up one by one, to dodge any nosy reporters. They were even told to only use their first names so they could hide their identities, even from each other's staff. Their destination? A private island, a kind of secret hunting lodge for the absolute titans of finance. And that destination was Jekyll Island, right off the coast of Georgia. So what was this super secret get-together all about? Well, according to G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, the whole point was to draft the blueprint for what would become America's central bank, the Federal Reserve System. So who exactly was on this train? I mean, this was not just a random group of rich guys. The source material claims these men together represented something like 1/4 of the entire world's wealth at the time. You've got Senator Aldrich, a major political player, and, get this, John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s father-in-law. You've got top guys from J.P. Morgan, Kuhn Loeb and Company, and the presidents of the biggest banks in New York. These were the absolute kings of Wall Street, and they were about to cook up a whole new formula for money itself. A new formula for money. What does that even mean? Well, the sources we're looking at argue it was a massive shift, away from money that had real, tangible value, to a new kind of system. One that could be controlled and, maybe more importantly, expanded forever. And this is where we get to the one core concept that really changed the whole game. That key concept is something called fiat money. Now, fiat is just Latin for let it be done. Basically, it's money just because the government says it's money. It's not backed by gold or anything physical. To explain this, the book uses this wild historical example. Way back in the 13th century, Kublai Khan created paper notes that cost him, practically nothing to make. And then he just decreed that everybody in his kingdom had to accept it as payment. And if you refused, the punishment was death. So you see, the value wasn't actually in the paper itself. It was in the Khan's raw power to make you use it. The book claims that this control over creating money out of thin air makes something possible that it calls the Rothschild formula. And the theory, as it's laid out, goes something like this. Step 1. Financiers secretly fund both sides of a war. Step 2. War is insanely expensive, right? So nations have to borrow huge amounts of money, which creates massive government debt. And step 3. The financiers make a fortune from the interest on all that debt, and in the process, they gain incredible influence over the very countries they helped bankrupt. Okay, this slide really lays out the two competing ideas perfectly. On one side, you've got commodity money. Think gold. It has value all by itself. Its supply is limited by nature. You have to dig it out of the ground. And that naturally puts a hard limit on how much a government can spend. But then, on the other side, you have fiat money. Its value is based purely on trust in the government. Its supply, well, it can be expanded infinitely. And according to these sources, that's what unlocks the door to endless government debt and spending. So what happens when a system like this gets put into practice? What are the real-world consequences? Well, the source material alleges that it creates this never-ending cycle, a kind of game where the big banks get to keep all their profits, but their losses, those become public. A game it calls the Great Bailout. Let's just use the author's own words here, because he's pretty blunt about it. He argues this isn't some conspiracy theory. It's just a documented fact of modern history. The basic idea is that when these massive financial institutions make huge, risky bets and fail, the system that was dreamed up on Jekyll Island makes sure they don't actually have to pay the price. Instead, the public, well, you, are forced to bail them out to keep the whole system from crashing down. And the book points to this pattern happening over and over again. You see it in 1970 with the Penn Central Railroad failure, where Congress had to step in with huge loan guarantees, then again in '82 with the Commonwealth Bank of Detroit. But the case of Continental Illinois in 1984 is presented as a huge turning point. We're talking about the 7th largest bank in the U.S. at the time, and it basically went broke after a ton of its risky loans went bad. I mean, the scale of this was just jaw-dropping at the time. The FDIC, which is the government's insurance agency, ended up taking on $4.5 billion in bad loans.
To put that in perspective, this was a massive government intervention. And the source claims this is what really cemented the idea of too big to fail. This concept where some companies are just so important to the system that the government has no choice but to rescue them, no matter how much it costs the taxpayers.
Okay, so if that's the secret history, where is all this headed? The sources we've looked at all seem to point in one direction: the next big evolution of fiat money, and that is central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. To put it simply, a CBDC would be a digital version of a country's currency, like a digital dollar, but issued directly by the central bank. And the argument from these sources is that this could be the ultimate form of financial control. Just stop and think about that question for a second. Seriously. What if every single dollar you spent could be tracked, traced, and maybe even just switched off? That is the absolute core of the concern that critics of CBDCs are raising. They're asking if we are sleepwalking into a system where our money comes with all sorts of strings attached. So here's a take from Joseph Wang, a former trader at the Federal Reserve, cited in a Cato Institute report. He says a CBDC isn't just a convenient digital dollar. No, he says it would completely rewire the relationship between you and the state, and that it could deal a historic blow to your privacy and liberty. And then William Luther from the American Institute for Economic Research, well, he takes it even one step further. He basically says, look, it's foolish to think that once a government has this powerful tool for financial surveillance, that they won't eventually use it for political reasons. The argument is that the temptation to watch and even censor people you disagree with would just be too strong to resist. And Marta Belcher from the Filecoin Foundation really sums up the whole concern here. She calls CBDCs a nightmare for civil liberties. And the two key phrases to focus on are visibility into financial transactions and the ability to revoke money. So we're not just talking about watching what you do. We're talking about having an actual on-off switch for your entire economic life.
But, this story doesn't just end there, because as all these fears about centralized control have started to grow, a completely different story has started to take shape. This one isn't about trying to fix the old system, it's about building a brand new one, completely outside of it.
Author Robert Kiyosaki made this exact point recently when talking about assets like Bitcoin. The whole appeal, he argues, is its independence. It runs on a network that doesn't need permission from a central bank, a government, or any of the big shots on Wall Street. It's just a totally different philosophy of how money should work. And when you look at them side by side like this, you can really see the two paths diverging. On one side, you have the centralized model, the one that started on Jekyll Island and could end with CBDCs. It's top-down, you need permission to use it, and your transactions can be censored. On the other side, you have this decentralized model. It's a peer-to-peer network, it's permissionless, anyone can use it. And once a transaction is confirmed, it's pretty much set in stone. It's a system that replaces trust in big institutions with trust in open-source computer code. And all of this brings us to the final and most important question, because based on everything these sources are showing us, the future of money isn't just about some fancy new technology. It's about a really fundamental choice, a choice about power and about freedom. So that's really the choice that's being laid out. On one hand, you have a vision for money that's super efficient, programmable, and centralized, giving governments these incredible new tools for control. And on the other hand, you have a vision for money that's decentralized, transparent, and censorship-resistant, offering people a new level of financial freedom. According to these sources, that secret history that began on a private island more than 100 years ago, it has led us right to this moment. The only question left is, which path do we choose?